Hey everyone! Today, we're going to dive deep into two of the most complicated and frankly misunderstood parts of bipolar disorder, something called mixed features and another called rapid cycling. Now, these aren't just fancy clinical terms. They represent really intense periods of instability and risk, and getting a handle on them is absolutely critical. So let's just start with a simple question to get our heads around this. What in the world happens when the high energy, racing thought, impulsive feeling of mania slams head on into the despair, hopelessness, and dark thoughts of depression? It's kind of like flooring the gas pedal and the brake in your car at the exact same time. That internal chaos, that collision, that's really at the heart of what we're talking about today. All right, so to really get this, we've got to be super clear about the words we're using. So in this first part, let's just unpack the official definitions for both mixed features and rapid cycling. Okay, so what's super interesting here is seeing how our understanding of this has changed over time. The old diagnostic manual, the DSM-IV, had this really strict definition for a mixed episode. I mean, you literally had to meet the full checklist for mania and depression at the same time. As you can imagine, that was pretty rare. The new manual, the DSM-V, switched it to mixed features, which is a much more flexible and honestly a much more useful idea that actually reflects what people go through.
So here's the definition we use today. Mixed features is what's called a specifier. Just think of it like an extra tag you add to a diagnosis. It means that while someone's in a primary mood episode, could be mania, hypomania, or depression, they're also having at least 3 symptoms from the opposite side. So for example, someone could be in a major depressive episode, but at the same time have racing thoughts, be easily distracted, and feel full of restless energy. That would be a depressive episode with mixed features.
And the second big term here is rapid cycling. Just like mixed features, this is another specifier, and this one is all about speed and frequency. If a person with bipolar disorder has 4 or more separate mood episodes in a single 12-month span, their illness gets the specifier. It really points to a pattern of intense instability. Okay, so now that we know what these things are, let's talk about why it's so important to spot them. I mean, why does this matter so much? Well, because these specifiers are basically giant clinical red flags. They tell us that the illness is taking a more severe path and that the stakes for that person are way higher. And just look at how common these states are. It's pretty eye-opening. You see mixed features pop up in about 11 or 12% of depressive episodes, which is significant. But look at mania or hypomania. It's over 26%. It happens more than a quarter of the time. That tells you this agitated, miserable energy is a really frequent and dangerous part of manic states. And what about rapid cycling? Yeah, it's not rare at all. Research suggests that about 30%, that's nearly 1 out of every 3 people with bipolar disorder, will go through a period of rapid cycling at some point in their life. Now, this is the most important thing to understand. The single biggest danger with mixed features is the absolutely staggering increase in suicide risk. The data suggests that the chance of a suicide attempt can be up to 65 times higher than in a pure manic or depressive state. That's that lethal cocktail we talked about, the hopelessness of depression fueled by the energy and impulsivity of mania. It's just devastating. And the high stakes don't stop there. Both mixed features and rapid cycling are tied to a whole list of other challenges. They tend to be more common in women, they're linked with higher rates of anxiety and substance use, and they often show up with an earlier start to the illness and a history of trauma. When you put it all together, you're looking at a much more complicated and severe version of the disorder. So, with the risks this high, how do clinicians even begin to figure this out? It's like trying to solve a really complex puzzle that requires a ton of careful, detailed detective work. Answering this question is, without a doubt, the most critical first step to getting someone to safety and starting an effective treatment plan. So, what does that process actually look like? Well, a good diagnosis is never, ever made in one quick visit. It's a whole process. Clinicians have to map out a person's entire history of mood swings, do a really thorough check of their current mental state, and, of course, ask directly about risk. They also have to play detective, looking for triggers like substance use or even other prescribed meds, and talking to family members to get the bigger picture. And finally, they have to rule out physical causes, like a thyroid problem, which can sometimes mimic these symptoms. And what makes it even harder is that there are so many other conditions that can look a lot like this. The intense mood shifts in borderline personality disorder, the constant ups and downs of cyclothymia, or the effects of substance abuse. They can all mimic mixed states or rapid cycling. So carefully ruling these other things out is absolutely essential to make sure you're treating the right problem. Okay, so that brings us to our last section, treatment. And if getting the diagnosis is a puzzle, then finding the right treatment path can feel like trying to navigate a maze in the dark, especially with how uniquely challenging these conditions are. So I want you to really let this sink in because it shows you just how tough this is. According to the top treatment guidelines out there are simply no established first-line medications for mixed episodes. That's a huge deal. Unlike pure mania or pure depression, where there's a clear starting playbook, here, there isn't one. So, for a manic episode that has depressive symptoms mixed in, clinicians have to jump straight to what are considered second-line options, like acenapine or valproic acid. And just as important, look at what's not recommended. Lithium and risperidone, two huge common treatments for pure mania, are often avoided here because they might not work as well or could even make the depressive symptoms worse. And it's a really similar story for depressive episodes with mixed features. Again, you start with second-line options, but the biggest takeaway here, the thing you have to remember, is what to avoid. Antidepressants, they are a big no-go. And this right here is exactly why. Giving a standard antidepressant to someone in a bipolar mixed state can be like pouring gasoline on a fire. The evidence is pretty clear that it can seriously increase the risk of switching them into a full-blown manic or hypomanic episode, which just creates even more chaos and instability. Treating rapid cycling is also a massive challenge. Honestly, the evidence for what works best is pretty thin, and different studies sometimes say different things. While some medications seem to help, there's no single magic bullet. And that's why things beyond medication, like psychoeducation for the patient and their family, or even ECT, become such incredibly important tools in trying to find some stability. So, if you only take one thing away from all of this today, please let it be this. Seeing mixed features or rapid cycling is a critical signal. It tells you that this is a more severe, more complicated, and higher risk form of bipolar disorder, and it demands early, careful, and very specialized care. And that really just leaves us with one last big question. Beyond all the clinical data and the treatment charts, these conditions have an absolutely profound impact on a person's life and on their family's lives. So how can we take this deeper clinical knowledge and actually translate it into better support, more empathy, and truly personalized care for the people who are navigating these incredibly difficult states?